Hi, everyone. Welcome to VRARA Bytes podcast, our weekly show featuring the movers and shakers in the XR industry. Now, we've had a few months break in the podcast, so I'm excited to get back to meeting with the movers and shakers in the community. And so to kick off our new year, my guest today is Lisa Watts, who's the Vice President of Product Marketing and Planning at Magic Leap. Now, Lisa joined Magic Leap in June of last year. But prior to joining Magic Leap, Lisa was a CEO of 121 Immersive, which was her own consulting practice. And prior to that, she spent 25 years at Intel, where she's held many different roles. But her last role was the Global Director of Immersive Technologies Marketing. So now Lisa has some real experience and passion in this immersive industry. Now, Lisa and I had a chance to meet a few weeks ago at the launch of the VRAR Miami chapter, which many of you know is near Magic Leap's headquarters in Plantation. And Lisa was gracious enough to share the plans that she had for the Magic Leap 2 and some of her own experiences. Now, I wanted to invite her to the podcast so that we could spend some time to know more about you and introduce you to our Central Florida community. So, Lisa, welcome to the VRAR Bytes podcast.
Thank you for having me, John. I'm really happy to be here.
So tell us a little bit more about your journey and how you got to Magic Leap.
Magic Leap has been, of course, a very interesting story since they began over 11 years ago. So when the AR, VR market starts to explode, Oculus, Magic Leap, HTC, et cetera, started really leading the way out with the devices that help us really start to unpack the possibilities. And one of the things that was always interesting to me was that everyone was looking for this kind of linear transition of technologies. So there was going to be VR, and then there was going to be virtual reality, then there was going to be augmented reality, and then there's going to be mixed reality. So they kept saying, okay, we're just going to transition through these things, like AR is going to eat VR and MR is going to eat them both, sort of like that 7, 8, 9 scenario. But coming from, the compute side of the house, personal computing, et cetera, from Intel, you've got a lot of perspective on how these technologies come to life, and it usually is much more nuanced than that. So everyone's waiting for the cell phone to take over the computer, but if you talk to people at work, there's more often than not they go right back to their laptop to do work. So when the opportunity came up to help Magic Leap on the technical marketing side, I thought this was kind of a perfect opportunity for me to really kind of lean in and really get my hands, directly on a product that I think is really positioned at the right place and right time. And we do know this is a second version of the product for Magic Leap and much more targeted at enterprise. But given my enterprise background and what I had done at Intel and what I learned during my consulting time, it just kind of felt like a perfect fit. So super excited, I've been super excited to roll my sleeves up and really work with the company to get the product to market.
Yeah, and it's as you said, I don't think a lot of people realize that Magic Leap's been around for 11 years.
Yeah, the first Magic Leap 1 was launched in 2018 and very much focused at the consumer market. I think it is still a very groundbreaking product. And the idea about in 2020, they had an idea to really start to pivot the second version into the enterprise market. I think this was for a few reasons. One is the maturity of the wearable augmented reality market was still evolving in 2018, and second, a lot of the use cases that we're seeing, even then, the vast majority of developers who were looking to develop solutions on the platform were thinking about it from a more business standpoint. So kind of resetting and taking a look at what those requirements are from an enterprise business perspective made a lot of sense for the company at the time. And I think as the metaverse is unpacking in these days, it really is proving to be the right decision.
One of the things that was really apparent to me when you presented at our chapter meeting was that the device is really, it's a wearable computer, right? It's not glasses, it's not a light device. This is really a super powerful machine with lots of capabilities. So how do you see that? I guess as you pivot to the enterprise, how are you seeing the use cases? Are you seeing the use cases driving the development or the other way around?
I mean, I think we're seeing the capabilities drive the development, not even necessarily the use cases, right? So we want to be careful, so we want to call this a wearable compute device that does great AR. I would say we don't want to be necessarily, again, in that 7, 8, 9 scenario where we're going in to say that this is going to be the device that's going to replace a laptop or anything like that. That's not the intention of it, right? But when you move computing from 2D onto, to 3D, and then you start putting that on your body as human, it makes it very important that we be able to have a device that performs in a way that is responsive to what a human would expect as far as their senses and kind of their capabilities. So what we try to do is we really talk about the capabilities and the usages versus the use cases, because I think we do have specialties at Magic Leap that are focused on the defense industry, the health industry, and the manufacturing industries, because those have pretty specific things that they want to do with the device, and whether it be assisted training or remote assist or assisted surgery or those sorts of things. And we have our development community that is developing solutions around those sorts of scenarios. But from a broader developer ecosystem perspective, as you at Unity know, we just don't always know what developers are going to invent. And so it's very important for us to be able to explain exactly what the capabilities of the platform are, make sure that we're doing the enabling pieces of it, working with Unity and with our own SDK and tools to expose those capabilities, because we want them to be able to, we want to unblock and unlock developers, which is why we've taken this approach with the open platform, leveraging AOSP, which other industry players that are our peers have also made that decision to kind of move away from a custom operating system and be much more open. So I think this will be an important pivot point for the industry.
Excellent. Okay, so now part of our podcast, we do the 5 and 5, which is typically 5 questions in 5 minutes, but we never make it 5 minutes. It's always longer, but just kind of some fun questions. So what's the most interesting project that you've seen or worked on that uses XR technology?
Well, I got to work on some really fun stuff when I was at Intel. And one of the most fun ones that we did was doing basically a sort of a pseudo digital twin from the movie Ready Player One. And so we worked on that with HTC, Warner Brothers, and a company called Sansar, I was out of Linden Lab at the time. And we created a digital twin of H's garage from the movie. So that was super fun and exciting. It's one of those things where you get to watch Steven Spielberg run around in your creation in a Vive headset and say, oh, I got that shot. Oh, I didn't get that shot. So just kind of reinforced the power. We did that back in 2017, 2018. So it's amazing to see how far things have even come since then. But I still think that was one of my favorites.
Yeah, it sounds cool. So what do you think are the biggest challenges facing widespread adoption of XR?
I think the opportunity we have right now is that a lot of the barriers to entry relative to people's stigma around wearing, the kind of the head worn piece of it, like AR from a device point of view. When you talk about, AR games and, AR shopping and those sorts of things with the phone in hand, people are starting to get used to those capabilities. I think the problem that we have is that from a display point of view, we are kind of attaching ourselves to these single, narrow devices for powering that compute. And so I think having people understand that XR is a spectrum of things, that it's not just, again, the 7, 8, 9 scenario where it's I'm either VR, AR, mixed, or whatever. Like a lot of the more advanced projection technologies, you can see, the Van Gogh thing that was touring, etc. Those are all very legitimate ways to get to like more immersive experiences. And I think that's going to be a key challenge for us to have these experiences and these capabilities, especially from a work perspective, to be able to transition, cross-platform. And everybody has this kind of cross-platform challenge. You see that in even the cable companies are like, you can watch it on your TV and then transfer it to your computer and then transfer it to your phone. I mean, these are all things that have to be developed out from an ecosystem perspective. And that's why OpenAR cloud, and you know, which is kind of the precursor to some of the metaverse conversations is so important. You know, Unity's own drive to, you know, try to provide technology that creates digital twins. It's all of these things needing to come together, I think, that makes for a seamless user experience. It's probably going to take us the next decade or two to actually even get to the point where, you know, this is more ubiquitous. But I think we have a big opportunity now because people's, if you remember when Google Glass came out, there was quite a bit of pushback. People were really nervous about people wearing cameras on their faces and walking around. Now that's much more acceptable. So I think that's the opportunity side for all of us. It's much more ubiquitous in society, and I think it gives us a very good opportunity to start to grow.
Excellent. Okay, now who in the VR AR community inspires you, or who do you follow to keep tabs of what's going on?
To me, I pay attention to a couple of different areas. One is, and I probably won't going to call out anybody by name necessarily, but so very interested in what's happening. You know, I've been associated with the OpenAR cloud, you know, a group for quite some time. So that idea of those folks that are working on the open platform approach to how are we going to aggregate bringing data and information together, but also consider how we're going to keep that information private for individuals, or allow corporations to manage their own data and information. So it's really interested in the people that are working really at that intersect, right,
Okay.
of privacy and you know, security, but also in, you know, the monetization, because it's like we're all not charities, right? So, you know, we have to figure out what's the good balance between the monetization, and if you're, you know, companies are going to be building out a lot of this infrastructure because they have to, you know, and they want to be able to monetize it. That's the point of doing it. But how do we strike that balance? So that's a really interesting area of development that I really closely follow.
Excellent. Okay. Now, you may not be able to answer this, but, you know, the other question is, are you working on anything interesting anything in the moment that might be interesting to our members?
Well, I think the main thing for Magic Leap right now is, you know, really getting our product to market. And so that is the most interesting thing. You know, it's my day-to-day, it's my passion, it's what we are doing, you know, here underneath the roof of Magic Leap right now. We will see in the coming days and weeks much more information that we're revealing about the product. We still haven't said exactly when we're going to, you know, of course, you know, make it available for ordering, but, you know, it is this year, as we've said. So I think that's going to be super exciting for us to continue to unpack more details about the platform as it's coming out. And I think people had some skepticism. Is it going to be real? I can assure you it is. And it's really is one of the most exciting, you know, platforms in this space that I think we will have seen in you know, in the last, you know, 18 months.
Yep. Agree. Okay. And then the last question, what would you like to see more from the VRAR Association?
What I'd like to see is the members actually getting out into the, you know, industry communities as a whole. So, you know, inspiring each other, getting together with each other, and, you know, keeping things moving forward, I think is really, really key. Now, I think it's really important for us to also figure out how we're going to get out into the, you know, general population. So, I think we still, as a community, still spend a lot of time with each other. So I think this is such a wonderful community of thinkers and movers and shakers and innovators. Would be great to have a concerted effort of the membership to really figure out how we're going to now go and kind of float all boats. Like, where are the places where we should be participating to start to carry the message forward? Because there's many industries that I think are still behind in wanting to understand what immersive can bring to the table. And I think, you know, being ambassadors to the industry, you know, particularly enterprise industry, you know, industries, work industries as a whole. And then of course there's the consumer elements of that as well. But I think it's that B2B business segment that's going to be the most transformative over the next decade. And I think our membership here at the VRAR Association can be a huge impetus on that education and being an ambassador for the technologies to the broader market.
No, you know, someone asked me the other day, that a new member that joined, how can I take advantage of this. And I said, my recommendation is get involved in the committees, right? We've got a lot of different committees. Figure out the industry that you're interested in, because we're starting to see this shift now from general information to very specific focus around industries and use cases.
Yes.
And to me, that's a sign of adoption, right? A sign of adoption is when, okay, we're focusing on medical or healthcare, defense, or storytelling. And so, yeah, I think you're right. I think it's, you know, so many years we were all kind of leaning on each other to learn and understand the technology a bit better. And I think we're now at a point where getting into those other industries is really the way that it's can, you know, drive broad scale adoption.
Yeah.
And then of course you guys got to get your product out to market too, so that we can amplify that, right?
Yeah, I got to get back to work.
Well, look, Lisa, thank you so much for spending time with me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. I appreciate you hosting me.
Take care.